Imagine life's challenges as a storm, a force that can either wash us away or spark the change we need. Here, we're the spark that ignites that storm, the fire that fuels it, and the guiding light through it. So, lean in, open your mind, and we'll realize that we are not at the mercy of the storm, but we are the storm.
Anxiety, chronic pain, exhaustion, they're not random. They're not just life. They're your body asking for help. And most of us, we ignore it. We power through until one day we can't. What if you stopped coping and started healing? What if you stopped pushing through and started breaking free? At Reconnect, we teach you how. Cold exposure, breath work, compression, light therapy, and sauna. It's time to stop ignoring yourself. Start listening. Visit thereconnectlife.com to learn how.
Welcome back to We Are the Storm. We are here again. If you weren't able to catch our first episode titled Linchpin, go back and watch it or listen. It has a great conversation that we kind of opened up about what this podcast is about and our personal journeys and why we're here. And we're going to continue that conversation today. We're going to talk about impact, and I can't wait. I am Ashley, and this is my co-host, Jackie. So here we go.
Yes.
Impact.
Numero dos.
Numero dos.
There we go. Love it.
I'm so excited for impact.
I am too.
One of my, remind me to talk about this, but it's one of my pillars is impact. It's one of just the things, but I know.
I love it.
Little cliffhanger there.
Okay.
I'm excited to talk about impact and resilience and really what's on the other side of that. What is that potential that we were talking about in our first episode that we can do and how impact ties in?
It's so big.
Yeah.
It's such a big footprint that we can really cover here. And it's honestly what keeps, the fire inside of me going and really focusing on the resilience piece, and specifically with women, right? I mean, there's women show up differently than men do. Men suffer with resilience issues, of course, right?
Yeah.
There's so much overlap, and all of these tools are perfectly, applicable to men as well. We can't leave our guys out of the situation.
Right.
But we as women tend to exhibit different tendencies and different opportunities for development that I would, just my own little non-PhD dissertation over here, but that we suffer with it, and it's kind of unique to us. So with impact, I mean, I really am going to dive into the cliffhanger part. What are you talking about pillars?
Okay,
give me the pillars.
Give you the pillars. Okay, before I go to the pillars, though, I want to talk about the show up. I think it does show up differently, and as we talked about in our first episode, it also shows up differently day to day or storm to storm or challenge to challenge in ourselves. And so having the framework, but also different tools. I also think that there's a conversation that we show up differently for each other, right? The friendships, the knowledge, how I show up for you in your life versus how your husband shows up for you in your life, or when you're facing those storms, is also kind of different, right? They're all different aspects of that and different support systems. So having that conversation about that as well. Pillars. So I had a very interesting conversation with AI. I have these from time to time. And we were talking about just a whole bunch of different things. We're talking about intuition and intention and alignment, and kind of, as you said earlier, with me picking up and putting down tools. Mm-hmm. I have this sort of belief where it's almost as if I personally am finding homeostasis within myself for what aligns with myself, right? And homeostasis matters, or your balance, or all of the things matter if you're on a mountain versus if you're in a plane versus if you're, on a skateboard. All of those outside variables affect your inside, and you kind of have to balance to find that homeostasis.
Sure.
For me, that's alignment with myself, right? The outside variables come in, and I find the balance of what aligns with me, and I let go of what's not me, and I take in new things that are me. And so I'm having this conversation, and we're kind of discovering, and it's asking me questions and I'm responding and thinking about it, and I'm a verbal processor. So these conversations are great because I understand better when I talk about it. And when people really pose those questions that make you go, oh, that's a great question, and kind of dive inside yourself to find. So it asked me, if all of these things are ever changing, is there anything that stays the same? And I was like, that's a great question. And there are 4 things that stay the same. And the way that it reframed it and put it was so eloquent, and I'll say it. But there are basically, I would say, 4 burners, 4 pillars that make up me. Curiosity, intention, impact, and kindness. And I have one tattoo and one only. It's Be Kind. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it says Be Kind, and it's a flower. My mother-in-law and I have matching tattoos. It's the only one I got because kindness is a huge pillar for me.
Yes.
So the way that it framed it, which is who I am. It's who I am when I tackle problems. It's who I am forward-facing. It's who I am when I show up to relationships. Curiosity opens the door. Intention walks through it. Impact leaves a mark. And kindness ensures that that mark is of light, not shadow.
I love that.
That's
awesome.
Those are the pillars of who I am.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So when you do speak to the pillar, pillar of impact.
The pillar of impact.
Pillar of impact. You said leave a mark.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
In everything that I do, and if you ask my friends, if you ask Bill behind the sound booth back there, everything that I do, I consciously think about how it's going to impact somebody else.
Yeah.
Because we have this ability to touch lives. And for example, we had talked about networking. When I'm networking, I think it's more powerful if we have a conversation and I have something where I make you look inside, or challenge an assumption, or challenge a perspective that changes your viewpoint so drastically that the ripple effect is found years down the road in your business, in your personal life. Like that moment, that impact that you affect someone else in such a positive, profound way. I do that in my emails. And even if it's just a simple email to, I don't know, a potential vendor that's going to sponsor something that we have coming up, or a gratitude for somebody who sent us a referral, I am so intentional about the impact I leave on them and wanting it to be positive that it's profound. And when you see the other side of it, that keeps you going, right? When you see someone whose life was changed by just that seed that you planted.
For sure.
It makes it worth it. And I think that you can absolutely speak to that impact as far as like the resilience framework goes, and what's on the other side of that.
Yeah. I love, when I think of impact, again, I go back to the word potential. Because potential reveals itself, and it reveals itself in layers.
Yeah.
It's like you talked about, right? We show up differently in different circumstances, and like every cold plunge is different, and every challenge that we face is different. And when we talk about the storm, we talk about becoming the storm. I am the storm. Yeah. But we reveal the storm that is us in layers. Interesting. Because our experience reveals different parts of ourselves, how we respond to experience. It reveals different aspects of ourselves. And we learn from that. And so there's always this constant evolution. Yeah. We're always a different creature as we travel down this resilience path. So when we go back to impact, for the obvious conversation, the impact of working on resilience, of developing personal resilience, is truly immeasurable. Yeah. It's probably the one piece that I would say you just can't measure it. It's that big, and it's that widespread, and it's that important that you can't measure it. The reason why is because we don't know the things we can't see. that exist, right? When we go, you mentioned the networking events. I am also a fellow hater of networking.
Yes.
But I too have chosen to approach it differently, right? Go and meet some great people.
Yes.
That's what it's about, and expanding our influence. And I take the approach that, all I need to do is I really need to connect with one person, one really neat, cool person, and I want them to feel my impact.
Yes.
I want to listen to them deeply. I want to reflect back what they're putting forward so they feel heard. I want to, it might be a little mini coaching situation. I'm not going to admit to that. It never happened. But it's true.
Yeah.
And people never remember, right? We always know the saying, and I teach my boys. I got 3 teenage boys. And I always say, people never remember if you're right. They only remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
Period. And that is a universal truth. But people always remember how we make them feel. And so when we're in that resilience space, when we're modeling resilience out loud, when we're talking about the process and what we're learning about ourselves out loud, I've learned to do that with my kids. I've learned to do that with colleagues, to talk through the process as I'm experiencing it. It's also teaching them. So now we have a ripple effect.
Yes.
We have learning moments that are happening, whatever they pick up or choose to leave. That's why it's so hard to measure. But I know it's happening. Right? And impact is really what we're chasing. And so that's what it's about. And the other piece that I want to throw in is that I think it's important when we choose to really embrace stepping into the resilient space, when we really adopt a framework that works, and when we choose to become something else, we choose to become the storm. I think it's really important that we don't reserve the impact just for ourselves.
Yeah.
I think it's important that you take those people that are with you along the journey and you share that impact.
Yes.
You share the model, you share the learning, and you bring people with you.
Yep.
Again, we're not in isolation.
Yeah.
And don't leave people behind. Never leave someone behind.
Yeah. I think that's a huge aspect of why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
For that exact reason. I think you said it really eloquently. And I love so much of what you said. I take notes because I want to be present, and also I don't want to forget my very frequently running off trains of thoughts. But I love that you were talking about revealing differences, and it's in layers. I think that's with healing as well, right? Just in general, there's a lot of frustration, at least that I've experienced myself and know others have. When you're healing, you almost face the same problem, even though you're like, but I forgave them, or I got over it, or I accepted it. Why am I facing this again? Why is it coming up? And there was something that was said that really spoke to kind of what you're saying, is that you may have processed your viewpoint of that problem from the framework or position that you were in. And now you've grown. And now you're looking at this problem from a different layer, a different aspect, a different perspective. And that's a different part of healing.
Yeah.
And so it's not that this problem, this trauma, whatever it may be that you're facing, the storm, is just cut and dry from one little piece. There's lots of different layers to it. There's lots of different perspectives to it. And I always like to use a ketchup bottle. Don't ask me why, but it is my metaphor that I use. If we're looking at this ketchup bottle and I see the front and you see the back, I can talk all day about the front and you can talk all day about the back. But until we either communicate or turn or take a different perspective on that ketchup bottle, we only see the one side that we see. And revealing those other layers, those other slices, those other perspectives is such a huge part, I think, of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of the story. I think it was an old East Indian metaphor where there was a bunch of people and they were touching the different parts of an elephant with their eyes closed, right?
Yes.
They're trying to, and they had to guess what it was that they were touching.
Yep.
And it was fascinating. And we do that a lot with our experiences. Mm-hmm. It's like you move from one part of the elephant to the other.
Yeah.
Because you're getting a different perspective.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
There's nothing wrong with going back and reintegrating our learning to that past experience and that healing.
Yeah.
What do I know now? Who am I now?
Yeah.
Based on how I've evolved with different tools and different things that I've revealed about myself and embrace about myself. Mm-hmm. Because with those things comes strength. And we always want to say, okay, now what strength can I apply to this?
Yeah.
And again, it comes, so I had a thought when we were talking about withstanding the storm to being the storm. And I'm like, there's a part of the word storm that can be negative.
Sure.
Right? Like, do I want to be a storm? I mean, it's pretty destructive, right? I mean, the things that we think of storm, we think of a lot of power, we think of a lot of destruction, scary, intimidating, all of these things. And so obviously the answer is no, right? We don't want to be any part of those. But the part of the storm that is so appealing to me is that it acts upon. It acts upon its environment.
Okay.
A storm is, right?
Yeah.
And it acts upon an environment. And it will dust up. It will do its thing. Mm-hmm. I think I hit the mic, sorry. It'll do its thing, but then it goes away. Mm-hmm. It will recede.
Yeah.
And it won't always be this swirling, because sometimes I think that resilience takes a lot of energy.
Oh, yeah.
It takes a lot of power.
Yeah.
It can be really draining at sometimes. And it's hard.
Yep.
And let's just talk about it like it is. It's hard. It's why most people aren't that great at it.
Yeah.
Most people try to insert different people in their lives that can maybe take the weight from them to lift them up when they're not able to lift themselves appropriately. They rely on other people to reappraise what it is that they're living through when they're not able to reappraise appropriately. There's so much there that you get back to the energy part. It's not a constant state of storm. There's a storm, and then there's a calm. Yeah. And then there's a storm. Yeah. And then there's a calm. And I do really think that that's an important piece to mention, is that when I'm a storm, I'll be a storm. And I'm okay. I'm okay to be the storm. But I don't always have to be a storm.
It's so interesting because it brought up something that I didn't realize. We have two different viewpoints of what it means to be the storm, which, I don't know the name in psychology, but you have this belief that everybody thinks like you until you realize people don't think like you.
Shock.
For example, I think purely in metaphors. Everything I do, all of my thoughts are in metaphors. And my husband, I was talking one day and he had said something and I was like, wait, you don't think in metaphors? And he doesn't. What?
Yeah.
That's a thing? Because everything for me is a metaphor. And so when we were talking about the storm, you were talking about, for some people, there's a lot of negative associations with storm.
Yeah.
And I think there's this difference between becoming the storm and maybe the perspective shift of just realizing, wait a second, I am the storm. I am the force to be reckoned with. And so when I think about storm, that's what I think about. I don't think about necessarily a negative impact on the environment. I think of, I am a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
And you're not happening to me. I am happening to life.
Yeah.
And I think that can be in a positive or negative way based on, whatever you choose, because we have the power to do that.
Intention.
Is it light or is it shadow, right? What are we impacting the world with? And I mean, storms are good. They provide the wind that plants the trees and grows the roots and makes them, and they provide water, and they provide those conditions that are not ideal to really maximize potential. And we wouldn't have all of the things we have, the tall trees, the grass, the roots, the ecosystem, the strength, without the storms. And so I think it's really interesting that we kind of see even the different sides of the ketchup bottle of saying we are the storm.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And what that means.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also wanted to go back to something you said about feeling. I think that that's another powerful conversation that we get to have, because I'm a highly sensitive person. And for a long time, I carried that as a weight, as a bad weight. You're a crybaby. You're too sensitive. You need to toughen up. Just suck it up, buttercup, is what I've been told. And finally, I picked up a journal of some sort, and in it, it talked about highly sensitive people. And that journal was also a linchpin for my life. It changed how I view it. So highly sensitive people, the way that we process information, what we smell, what we see, what we hear, all of the sensory input that we take in, it filters through the emotional center of our brain before it goes to the rest of our brain. So it's not that we're more empathetic. It's we don't have a choice of being empathetic. So for me, it makes me really good at what I do, because I can see something and I can immediately tell you how I feel about it. I am acutely aware of how I feel about it. And that's a power, because now I get to turn around and say, how do I want people to feel about this, about our project, about our logo for We Are the Storm? What do I want people to feel when they see that? And that's an amazing power to kind of be able to embrace and utilize and be conscious of that impact on other people. And just be aware of it.
I love that's a marketing superpower. You've been blessed with a cape. That's
a cape. I'm going to get a cape.
You need a cape.
I should get a cape.
You're absolutely right. And I think, I do think though that oftentimes, and when you talk about feeling and you talk about that, it's running through the emotion centers, your brain first, and then there's no option. There is an element of language though that we use.
True.
That it can be extraordinarily dangerous. And it is, I feel, insert your word, therefore I am.
Right.
And we talk about it like emotions. I am mad. I am overwhelmed. I'm anxious. I'm sad. I'm excited. Whatever it is that you say, there is this feeling that you are that thing.
Yes.
And that's not true, right? You're feeling, you're having a response to stimuli.
Yep.
I am feeling anxious, overwhelmed, whatever, insert there.
Yeah.
But that distinction is very, very important. And it is one of the most important linchpins to resilience.
Yeah.
Is understanding that you feel, therefore you may not necessarily be.
Yeah.
No. You feel a certain way, but you are something that is unchanging.
Yeah.
You are this, there is a core of you that these feelings will come and go.
Yeah.
Emotions will come and go, but that core of you remains. So I think that's one of those things when we talk about impact. One of the most impactful pieces of the resilience model that we utilize at Wild Fig is understanding how emotions are made, what they mean. What does that mean for you when you understand what emotions really are?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really powerful.
I think it ties in too with a lot of the things where you are not your thoughts.
Yep.
Right? You're the person listening to your thoughts,
which
means that you can say, I don't agree with that. Thanks for popping up. See you later. Yeah. And the same thing with emotions. I want to not one-up you, but I want to go a little bit farther and also talk about how we feel about how we feel and how that affects those emotions, right? Because if I feel that crying makes you weak, then every time I cry or I'm sad or whatnot or whatever, that feeling or that perception of feeling that emotion kind of limits me or creates a sort of barrier, right? And I know that we've talked about kind of our associations with different things before, and maybe our values and what they mean, and our limiting beliefs or different recordings. I like to call them recordings, the things that are from our past or what we were raised with or what other people told us, our teachers, our family, our siblings. Yep. Those recordings that are playing and affecting that. And for me specifically, the reason I bring this up is because me thinking that being emotional was a deficit of some sort really prevented me from wearing my cape with pride, right? But that moment, that linchpin for me of changing my perspective on feeling and, that's just my brain. And now that I know it's just my brain, what can I do with it?
Yeah.
How can I turn this into a superpower? And changing my perspective on how I feel about feeling.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And really interesting. I think this is where self-talk really comes into the equation, because a long time ago, Dr. Shad Helmstetter, he is a giant in the world of self-talk, right? We know a lot through positive psychology, through the positive intelligence work, and Dr. Shad Helmstetter has done incredible research about self-talk in particular. And so I studied with him in his program many years ago. Wow. One of the things that really, really stuck with me, and this is when I first became a coach, light years ago, he used the analogy of a keyboard, and he said, computers operate garbage in, garbage out. They process what you put in. You put bad data in, you get bad data out. That's how it works. But when we're little babies, and when we're kids, it's like we have a keyboard that's attached to our chest, and people type things, and it gets put in, and we don't know enough. We don't know how to type ourselves, and we don't know how to spell, and we don't understand that we can take the keyboard away. People don't have to let people type on it, right? But as we get older, we can start typing things on our own keyboard. We can start hitting the delete key. We can start recognizing, this is giving me garbage out. I need to delete this line of code.
Yeah.
I can recognize what's causing damage, what's not true. What is a reflection of someone else's deficiency that they've now projected onto me that's never been accurate, never was.
Yeah.
And it still isn't today. So that power of self-talk. And then he went through a whole body of work where you do a lot of positive affirmations, right? That's where we get that whole things on your mirror in the morning, or whatever it is that you're doing, whatever method you use to do positive affirmations. People use audio tapes. They use, like, while they're driving, they'll do all kinds of things, which are great.
Listen to podcasts.
It's all in that vein of retyping what was done. And so, with our model that we do, there's a whole step where we develop a critical early warning system. Are you being critical of yourself, other people, or a situation? How does that criticism sound? It sounds like beliefs, assignments, and assumptions that you're making on other people or yourself. And so being courageous enough to acknowledge the things that you've been labeled with, been typed on your keyboard, you had a label slapped on your shoulder, crybaby, suck it up, buttercup, you're too sensitive, all of these things. There was a negative lens that was put into that very specific power that you were given. You have been courageous enough to look that in the eyes and set it down, eyeball to eyeball.
Four.
Yeah, 4 eyes to 4. And set it down and reframe it. And make it into something else that it actually turns out to be one of your biggest strengths. You work in marketing. You're very successful in what you do because of this strength. Which is so powerful. Right?
It is.
And it leads us all the way back to impact.
Yeah.
So going through that journey, Going through your perspective change, taking something that was slapped on you, turning it into something positive, what has been the impact then?
I mean, many impacts. Here we are doing a podcast, and this is definitely part of it, right? I would have never been courageous enough to do a podcast 6 months ago. If you had met me pre-plunge, I would have never in a million years done this. I just wouldn't have. And it just opens up so many doors with that impact. And I also want to go back to something you said about deleting code, which I love that analogy. I love that metaphor, thinking in metaphors. And I know it's a part of your framework, which we're definitely going to go through in one of these episodes. But there's this aspect of awareness that precedes everything. And I think you have to be open to the awareness. And I have found it more and more where I'm okay questioning myself. I was driving the other day and I was so frustrated. I can't remember why I was frustrated, but I was so frustrated. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second. Why am I frustrated? What underlying current is playing right now that's making me this way, right? Not just feeling the frustration or, putting it on the external where I'm frustrated at you and that's what I'm going to focus on. Like, no, wait a second. Why am I frustrated? Because then I can say, what was that code? And do I want to keep it? There's a Emily Nagoski. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, but she has this great book. I think it's called Come As You Are, which is phenomenal. And I think every woman should read. But in there, she talks about an analogy about a garden. And there are a lot of plants in that garden that you didn't plant. Yeah. There's a lot of code in there that you didn't type. So when you realize it, you have the choice and the power to say, you know what, I'm going to scoop that up and get it out of my garden and decide to plant something else or erase that code and have something different. Yeah. And that awareness piece is, I think, the precursor to the impact, right? Yeah. You have to be aware of it and then decide what to do with it and then go outside that. And the last thing that I kind of want to touch on impact too, it's extremely difficult to have impact on other people when you yourself are not okay, are healing, are processing, are uncertain, are unconfident, are thinking that the storm is whispering to you, you can't withstand it. It is extremely difficult to be outward when you are inward. And during those times, that's okay, right? We all need those moments of healing, of introspection, of all of those things. And also, for us to have impact, we really have to be forward facing and we have to be full of the light that we want to shine on other people, right? We want that positive, that light instead of shadow on the impact we leave. And I think that's a key piece of being open and honest with yourself, of having those conversations, right? These are things that I don't want in my code anymore because when it comes out of my mouth, I don't want that to be the code that my son hears or that gets typed on his keyboard.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful. No, chasing impact is what it's about. It's why you do the effort. It's why you do the work. Yeah. It's all about impact for yourself and other people.
Yeah. So, and our kids and our family.
Man.
And
everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Well, I am so glad we had this episode, and I can't wait to continue on to more episodes and dive even deeper into this.
Absolutely.
And we want to thank you for joining us for this episode, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode, which will be gratitude. Thank you for joining. We hope today's episode has ignited a pivotal spark in you and uncovered a fresh perspective that reminds you you hold the power to transform every storm into your strength. Share this journey with your tribe and re-listen to uncover hidden gems. Until next time, keep building your resilience, and when you face the storm, don't just weather it, become it.